Pull up a chair, get comfortable.
I came here to have a good time today. I came here to have fun with friends.
You like that nerd speak.
3, 2, 1, 0. Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome, friends. Welcome. You know, there was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people to see if we could become something more. No, this is not the Avengers we're talking about, not even the Prevengers. No, this is the Manufictioners Club. And our idea was actually to take our love of technology and genre fiction, turn it into a podcast, to create a place where people discuss tech in comic books, sci-fi, fantasy, and do it as if like the real technology projects, like things that you're actually building and developing. But contrary to how that might sound, we actually had a lot of fun doing it along the way. So that was the idea, and I think we did it. We launched our first season of the Manufictioners Club in May 2022 to explore the development of the Iron Man armor in both the 1960s Marvel comics as well as the 2008 Marvel Cinematic Universe film starring Robert Downey Jr. And here, finally, in response to popular demand and several federal subpoenas, we present the videos of those recordings for your enjoyment, amusement, and perhaps even your bemusement. Join us now for part 1 of episode 1 and get ready for a pop culture expedition you never saw coming. Welcome, friends. This is the Manufictioners Club. That's right, you heard me right. The Manufictioners Club, not the Manufacturers Club. Just in case you got that wrong, this is not an industrial trade union show. No, this is a new way to talk about genre fiction and the technology in genre fiction. What do I mean? Well, what I mean is when you watch a comic book movie, when you read a comic book, you play a video game, there's technology in there, right? And have you ever thought to yourself, how did they build that? How did they decide to build that? How did they figure out what to build? Well, those are some of the questions we'll be answering, as well as many others, and probably answering things that we don't even know we're asking yet. That's how far we're going to go. And we're going to do this in a full season. So season 1, let's be honest, it was a tough choice because we have, 70 years of Marvel comics, something like 90 years of DC comics, centuries of video games to choose from. So it was a winnowing process. We did a lot of focus groups, and we landed, not surprisingly, with Iron Man armor. That's what we're going to talk about this season. Who built the Iron Man armor? Why did he build it? What was he trying to accomplish? How did he go about testing the Iron Man armor? And more importantly, how did he finally put that thing together so that he could escape that cave? And important to note when we're talking about Iron Man, you have not only the 2008 movie version in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that that's the movie that kicked it all off, but you also have the original Tales of Suspense number 39 from 1963, Tony Stark Iron Man, which, is very similar, but also very different. And we're going to get into some of those distinctions in our next episode and in subsequent episodes as well, because those differences, while somewhat superficial, really do affect how you develop the Iron Man armor. So stay tuned for more of that. So the first step along the way of any project to build technology, as you guys know, and while I'm saying you guys, I just realized no one knows who you guys are except me right now. Well, I'm sure people know you.
They know us.
No, they know you. Your family knows you.
Yes.
Your significant others, perhaps people you work with, they all know you. But let's introduce you to the audience, and maybe introduce me too. But I'll go last. So the young lady sitting across from me, for those of you who are watching at home, And those of you listening, I can assure you she is, in fact, sitting directly across from me.
It's true.
This is
True story.
Zaheen.
Hello.
Zaheen is probably the nerd girl video gamer. High expectations to be set there.
Yeah, now I'm scared.
No
What have you
pressure.
done?
No pressure.
And if there's anybody that's going to live up to those expectations, it is Zaheen. Trust me, I know. I've known her for years. She's all that and a bag of chips.
Can't forget the chips.
Wow.
Crucial.
Wow.
I don't like to toot my own horn, but he's right.
Well, and please, as they would have said on Saturday Night Live, toot away. It was plug away. But anyway, that's an old 90s Saturday Night Live reference. The gentleman to my right, and again for those listening, truly on my right, is Carl. Carl, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Carl is also an nerd. He's the blended comic book video game. So Zaheen is more on the video game side. I'm more on the comic side, but Carl is the synthesis. So Zaheen, you and I can talk offline about who's the thesis and who's the antithesis.
We'll discuss.
Yes. Maybe one of the things that our listeners can partake in on our Patreon, which is linked in the description of this episode and all others, is take advantage of the conversation board we'll have there. They can opine. Which one of us is the thesis and which one is the antithesis? Sorry, guys, we've already labeled Carl as the synthesis, so that's out of bounds.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I like that. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, your place in the firmament is firmly set.
I like this.
And last but not least, I hope.
Definitely not
it's
least.
me.
Yes, not least. No.
I'm Sean, and I will be your host on this guided journey, this guided meditation through the world of genre fiction. Okay, with those introductions out of the way and a subtle, oh so subtle plug to our Patreon page, let's talk, before we get into Iron Man specifics, before we talk about the people that we need to understand as part of the Iron Man journey, if you will, the Iron Man oeuvre, if you will. What is a stakeholder? And I'll give you a couple ideas, but then Zaheen and Carl, from your own experience, I want to hear you guys describe stakeholders as well. But to me, a stakeholder is not just someone who's going to use the technology necessarily. It's anyone who's going to be participating in the life cycle of that technology. Now, that sounds very imprecise, so let me give it a little more definition.
Okay,
what I
because I was
mean,
going to ask you about that. Yeah.
and that's Carl keeping me honest, and I respect that. That's why he's on my right, keeping me honest. So anyway, someone who's participating in the life cycle of technology. That could be someone who's getting a report out of a technology. So someone who's reading a newspaper article that has a Tableau dashboard output in it. That's a stakeholder, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's someone you have to think about when you're developing the technology. It could also be someone who's the manager of a process, who's not going to touch the technology, but is certainly a stakeholder in the sense that that technology has to support their process and make sure that their people are getting things done correctly. So it's not always as simple as just someone who's using the technology, but there are a lot of other people around the technology that have to be accounted for. So how did I do? What do you guys think?
So I think you got it right there. I think, simply put, a stakeholder is someone who cares about the technology in one way, shape, or form. Either they get output from it, either they're going to be the end user of that technology, or they are just invested in the process.
And I agree with Zaheen completely about that. And you, my question for you is, how far are you going with life cycle? Right, because we're all video game comic book nerds, so we
also appreciate foreshadowing.
Exactly, right. So we can all think in multiple timelines and universes and slippery slopes. So there's decision paralysis, right, where you end up thinking about so many possibilities, you get nowhere. So when you say life cycle, because I agree with Zaheen completely, like anyone who's affected, good or bad by it, I completely agree with that, and you said the same. How far are you thinking with life cycle?
Well,
right? Like, what is that?
And just so the listeners understand, I did not pay Carl for that question, nor did I prompt him in any way. But he asked a very incisive question, which is really germane to the entire season and the entire enterprise that is the Manufictioners Club. What is the life cycle of a technology? Is it just the, initial development to the deployment of the technology to the end user? I would say no. I would say the life cycle, much like our own human life cycle, is birth to death.
Okay.
Meaning, from the very beginning of the idea of the technology, so before you get into designing it, before you get into even defining your requirements, saying, here's something that I want. And before I can even begin to know what that is, how I'm going to do it, what form it's going to take, I have to have some idea of what that thing is going to be. All the way through to that technology either is destroyed or it, in some way no longer is used by anyone.
Okay.
So if you want to like really put that into real world terms, the wheel is a technology that is still very much in its life cycle. And, will be for the foreseeable future, well beyond our lifetimes. Whereas, something like the quill pen is no longer in its life cycle, except maybe for hobbyists.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's dead yet.
I wouldn't turn down a quill pen if someone gave it to me.
They're very pretty.
That's
Right,
true.
and if I offended any quill pen aficionados out there, that was not my intention, and I apologize.
Are you
Please
saying,
leave a comment
I was
and
gonna
let us
say,
know.
I was gonna say, do you want the quill pen aficionados to opine on this show?
I want everyone to opine on that, and if I have to step on a few toes to get people to sign up to be part of that conversation, I'll be the bad guy.
God.
I'm willing to shoulder that burden.
He's going rogue.
Ladies and gentlemen, you don't know this, but the BIC logo has just appeared on his T-shirt.
That was a little video moment we just had.
Yeah,
It was,
we
It was
did.
exciting.
That was nice.
All right, but I think that you guys understand what I mean though by life cycle.
Yes, yes.
Is it there are some technologies that are meant to be the Palm Pilot. No one uses the Palm Pilot anymore.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Or hey, let's use a
Kidding
common.
or serious? Kidding or serious about the Palm Pilot example?
Oh, I'm serious.
Oh, okay.
I'm very serious,
Okay,
actually.
gotcha.
I have no clue what you're.
I
Are you
got you.
talking? Is that a PDA? Is that?
It's not a public display of affection if that's what you're intoning, young lady.
What's the personal?
Digital assistant.
Ah,
That's what you were going for.
Yeah.
I know.
But I see what you did there. I see what you did.
Yeah, the Palm Pilot was like it was so it came after the Newton, which was
Yeah,
Apple's original handheld device from like the late 80s. But then there was the Palm Pilot that sort of, I'd say, like put the idea of a PDA in the mainstream.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Okay.
But it came before the original iPod, which preceded the Zune. I wanted to bring in the Zune as another technology that's no longer used.
That's true.
I think that one I know. That one I know.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that in because I feel involved now. So thank you.
And that's just a brief timeline of handheld technology.
Yep.
We're going to have a whole other season. Well, we'll talk about that.
I see what you
We'll
did.
discuss.
Stay tuned, everybody, for the timeline and history of handheld technology, which the wheel could qualify for some hand-holding uses. If you want to use the pizza cutter as an example of a wheel.
Yes, that's true.
I'm sure people have held wheels in their hands as well. So car wheels, truck wheel. Well, maybe not truck wheels. Those are huge.
What about
A little too
Hot
big.
Wheels?
Well, Hot Wheels, yes.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they can fit in the palm
Yeah.
of your hand. Yes, very true.
Maybe that's the Palm Pilot.
That could be it right there. Yep.
All right. Well, that's one of the things you're going to get in each episode and each season of the Manufictioners Club is we're going to have discursions, and that's part of the joy.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the idea of stakeholders. So we've defined a stakeholder as someone who's affected by the technology, has an interest in it, and has an investment in it. And one of the themes that I think I've learned over my years in project management and business analysis is sometimes you have to think about the stakeholders who don't even exist yet,
Mhm.
in the sense that there are people who are going to be using your technology that aren't even involved in your project or aren't in the sort of realm of use of the technology as yet. For example, if you're working at a company and you're developing a new process and you're developing new technology, software technology to support that process, there are people that don't work for your company yet that you can't, there's a limit to how much you can future-proof something, but you have to try to think of, is this something we're developing just for the people who are using it now? Or is this really something we have to keep in a broader context than just the people who are going to receive this technology in 6 months when we're done with it?
So, question for you then, right? So, still on the stakeholder front, then, I'm interested in what both of you think in terms of, so are you prioritizing the present and the future state stakeholders all the same? Or are
No.
you giving them different
No.
weights?
Definitely
Different
not.
weights.
So, which way, so like, which weight are you giving more to?
Definitely the present, because those are the people who are going to give you the more sort of specifics on what they want, so you can actually build for them better.
Mhm.
Future state, I think, you think about it and you try and future proof as much as you can, but with any sort of technology, things will evolve over time anyway. So as long as you give yourself the room to be adaptive and be able to actually change what you're doing, I think you're setting yourself on the right path to future proof. So yeah, definitely prioritizing present stakeholders.
And this is not a political turn, but for those of you who recall the Donald Rumsfeld all-time quote of, you have your known unknowns and your unknown unknowns. I think those future stakeholders are your unknown unknowns, because you don't know if they're going to be arriving in 6 months, a year, 10 years. It depends on what the technology is.